Hey, all you wickedly wonderful witches out there, and welcome to Weird Witchcraft, where we talk about witches, witchcraft, the unseen, and everything in between. I didn't really have a plan moving into this today, so we've got Sardine again joining us. Maybe I'll talk about familiars. You know, typically when people think about witches, they think their familiars are generally cats. But that's not really the truth. You can have birds, dogs, reptiles, amphibians. It doesn't matter. The thing with a familiar is that it's another creature that helps you to connect your energy to another realm.
Right? No?
She's like, I don't care. I just want to sit on your stuff. Now, Sardine here is not my familiar. She's just one of my cats. I don't actually have a familiar anymore. The one that I did have left one day and never came back. So I haven't had one since. Now, we have Miss Millie Brown, the mama kitty, over here. And she will sometimes sit in when I'm doing spell work and stuff. Oh, you going? Okay. Or not. Yeah. Let's give us a minute while she decides where she wants to go. Are you going up there? Or are you going down? There we go. So she'll sit in with my magic and stuff, but she's not really actively participating. She's just kind of drawn in by the energy that's being used or being pulled in or expelled, any number of things that the energy in the circumstance for, like the ritual or the spell or whatever, anything that's happening. So she likes to sit in and just kind of absorb that energy, but she's not actually actively assisting or helping in any way. Normally, when you want to talk about familiars actually assist us with our magic or our spell work or whatever. So my familiar Bella, she actually used to hold energy or hold space when I was doing a ritual that required a gate. So she would hold space at the gate to make sure nothing that wasn't supposed to come in came into the circle. She would sit and make sure that nothing that was supposed to stay in the circle left the circle, right? So she kind of, I never had to tell her this. This was just kind of a role she decided to adopt on her own. And you could tell that it was something that she was actively doing. Now, granted, there are people who have pets, animals, what have you, that kind of come and hang out, and they really enjoy the energy of a ritual or a spell, like the mama cat here, Miss Millie Brown. But again, like I said, she's not really my familiar because she's not taking an active part in what I'm doing. Now, that's not to say that she's not helpful at times, and certainly it's nice to have her there, but I guess it's just a different relationship when you have an animal that you recognize as a familiar, and they're almost acting as another witch or another component, another player in the ritual or the spell that you are partaking in, right? So to me, now, you know, other people might have other ideas of what a familiar is, but to me, it definitely has a different feel to it. I've had a couple different familiars throughout my life, and for me, they've mostly been cats. I did have a bird who was a familiar. I used to go out and like they were not my pet. I did not have this bird as a pet. I used to go out to a certain area in the forest and perform a little ritual, and I would do it once a month, and you know, it was like a moon ritual. And throughout the summer, because the bird was a migratory bird, throughout the summer when I started my ritual, I would see this little yellow finch. Now if you know anything about finches, they like to stay way high up in the trees. Like they don't really come down any further than the treetops. Like they like hanging out up there. But this little one, there was a branch that was probably, I'd say, about 8 feet above my head. This area, it was at the base of a tree. And it would sit on this branch when I began my ritual. And I could feel the shift in the air. So when I called the air elemental, it was like they were the conduit for it. They were the familiar. They were the spirit that was evoked when I called for air. So I felt that connection with this bird. And like I said, it's like they weren't a pet. I didn't own them or have them or anything. They just chose to be there and to share in the experience with me. Now, I have talked to a lot of different people who have cats as familiars, and that's pretty standard. But there have been a lot of people I've spoken to that have dogs or lizards or amphibians or, like I said, birds as their familiars, and they do spell work with them, they do rituals with them, or they have, you know, it's not even really something that you can force. It's just you can invite the animal, and it's up to them to choose to accept it, right? It's not really a, like, or at least that's been my experience, where it's not really something where you're like, yeah, this cat is my familiar or whatever, and you say it and then they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm your familiar. It's more of a subtle interaction. I think it's like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but you know, like for Miss Millie Brown, who likes to hang out when I do stuff, she just likes the energy of it. There's not really any exchange of energy, let's say. She just kind of likes to bask in whatever's happening. And that's all well and good. But like I said, with the way that I feel familiars are, it's more of an exchange. It's like they're an equal partner in what's happening, or at the very least, another participant in what's happening. And I think it's a very special connection. And quite frankly, it doesn't necessarily have to be an animal. A familiar can be a spirit or an entity that you make a connection with. You know, and as more people are kind of waking up to the fact that human beings aren't the only living creatures on the face of the planet and the universe and the parallel universes and the insert whatever here that are sentient, that they're realizing that we are a very small percentage of that energy, and allowing other entities and other beings to participate in what we're doing and being an active part of that is becoming a little bit more prevalent. And so the old stereotype of the witch with the black cat, which, you know, oddly enough, most of my life I've owned a black cat, but that's beside the point. you know, that old stereotype is falling away, because as we incorporate different energies in the way that we work, and we include things that maybe 10 years ago weren't in our awareness, or we might have been aware of them but didn't know the significance they held. You know, now we're starting to incorporate a lot of these things that it's starting to become a little bit more commonplace to, oh, excuse me, to perhaps have a familiar that isn't even in this plane of existence, you know. And I think that's really cool. I think that's really neat, because we get an opportunity to work with these energies that aren't prevalent here on Earth, you know, and then they get to work with stuff that they're not privy to, because the energy of Earth is quite a bit different than pretty much anywhere else in the universe, right? We have a very interesting relationship with the physicality of our world. So when you're able to kind of tap into those other energies and have another familiar with you that's able to kind of stretch their understanding with what you're doing, and you're able to stretch your understanding in how they're helping you with your spell work or with your rituals, it opens you up to this broader spectrum of all this stuff that's going on behind the scenes that you might not even realize is there, or you have an awareness of it but you don't know how to tap into it. So I think that's another reason why I really enjoy working with familiars. Now, like I said, I don't have one right now, and I really haven't tried to tap into generating a familiar for myself, if you will, or like connecting with an entity or a being that I could consider my familiar. And it's not because I'm like, oh, poof, I don't need a familiar, but it's more to do with right now I'm working on stuff that might not require that. And the way that I express my rituals or my spells and the energy that are contained in there, I don't necessarily need anybody to guide it or direct it right now. That's not to say that, hey, maybe one time I'll start doing something a little bit new, a different spell that I've never tried, or open a different tap into a different energy that I've never tried to tap into before, and then all of a sudden it'll be like, oh, hey, there is a creature, a being, an animal, a whatever that is here that would like to assist you. Are you open to having a familiar? And of course the answer is yes, I am definitely open to having a familiar. It's just not something that I have right now. You know, so I think the emphasis put on having that is also something that can be a little misleading. Like, is it nice to have a familiar? Of course. Do you necessarily need one? Not really. But it's nice to have, right? And the relationship is definitely very different than any relationship that you'll have with a pet. Like, pets can be very in tune with stuff, don't get me wrong. And in fact, you know, my dog, who is sitting here down underneath my feet, will stay with me when I do spells and rituals as well. But they're not really an active part of that. You know, they understand the changes in the energy and stuff. You know, animals are actually quite sensitive to that, which is why a lot of people have animals specifically as familiars, because they are aware of the vibrational changes that are occurring. You know, they probably understand it a little better than some of us. And I've been doing spell work for, you know, gosh, I don't know, close to 30 years, you know, and my dog might understand what's going on a little better than I do at times, you know. she's still not my familiar, but she understands the vibrations and understands how things are trending or going. That's why you have animals that freak out when you don't see anything outside, but there's something going on. Or, the birds that sense when a storm's happening. They are aware of these energies that shift and change, and they know when to stick around and when to get the hell out of Dodge, And to have a familiar that's able to kind of assist you with those more subtle vibrations that you may not be aware of, it makes it nice because it's, how do I describe it? It's like when you start walking down a path that you are unfamiliar with, you don't know what direction it really goes, you're not too sure, and the signpost has been knocked over. So you're like, yeah, okay, I could lift this signpost up, but I'm still not sure if I'm putting it in the right directions. There's this crossroads, there's 3 different ways to go. One says it's a really, really hard track, one says that it's really easy, and one says it's moderate. So I want to do the moderate track today, and I don't know which way I'm supposed to go. Well, what a familiar can do is they're like, oh, I know where this is going because I saw what trail led where before the sign got knocked over. Or I was there when the sign got knocked over, or they can be like, well, I can sense that more people have taken this trail or that trail or whatever it is, there's an energy to it. So they can actually kind of almost act as a neon sign, or like, some movies where they have like the glowing footprints and it's like, follow the glowing footprints. It's kind of like that, where they're like, hey, if you are interested in the energy of this moderate path, this is the direction you want to go. So they can act as guides almost to kind of assist you and help you in the best way to direct your energy. One of the other really great things about having a familiar is not only is it for magical work, but it's like having another member of your family. You do develop a closeness, you develop a strong bond with a familiar. I'm not saying you don't do that with pets, obviously you do, but a familiar kind of just gets it. They understand. There's like a deeper connection there. And I really miss my Bella. She was a little shithead, but it made my spell work just feel effortless and seamless. And she was a creature that knew when she was needed and when she could spend some time by herself. And I think with her disappearance, it was an indication for me that I was relying too heavily on her. Which also might be why I haven't got a familiar since. I haven't wanted one. Because it was such an integral relationship. And I don't know if I could ever find that again. Right? So when we talk about grieving loss and stuff, that is definitely something that is a part of it. So to open yourself up to having a familiar also opens yourself up to accepting the loss that may come with that. Now, I don't sense her at all, which she disappeared and I didn't know what happened to her. So for me, I like to think she's still alive helping someone, but I don't know for sure. And that makes it difficult because she disappeared and I don't know what happened to her. But at the same time, I understand that there is a time and a place and a cycle for everything. And she taught me that. Right? So even in her parting, she taught me the impermanence of life and how energy shifts and energy changes. And maybe even because I don't have another familiar yet, I might be a little gun shy. Because we had such a great relationship. I enjoyed doing spells and rituals with her. And I fear that I might not get that again. And I won't, because if I do decide to welcome a new familiar in, it will be different. The energy will be different. The relationship will be different. But I also know the intensity that a relationship with a familiar can have. And so I think, am I ready for that kind of a commitment? Am I ready for that level? I think some people enter into a familiarity, oh my goodness, words, a familiar relationship without understanding the depths of it, because it's like, oh, I have a familiar. It's not a buzzword. It's not a flavor of the month. It is a commitment, and it is a deep, impactful connection when you have something that you can connect with in that way, that has such a symbiotic relationship with magic, energies, things that are intrinsically who you are, and they just get it. They understand it, they amplify it, and they add their own individuality to yours. And it's like, there is nothing else that I can describe quite like it. And so if you have a familiar, count yourself lucky, because it is an amazing relationship. And will I have a familiar one day again? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe Bella was it for me. Like, I've had a couple before that, but she was my last one. And I'm okay with that, whatever comes. So I'm going to leave it there today. And kiss your familiars on the head for me. Unless it's a fish, I mean, maybe just rub it under the chin. Anyway, I hope you guys have a really great day. Do something good for yourself. I don't know, have a hot chocolate or your favorite beverage, which I'm drinking some coffee right now. Read a passage in a book. Do a little candle spell for yourself. Just a nice, happy, frivolous one. Whatever. Anyway, you guys take care. And if you have ideas for topics, feel free to let me know. I'm up to pretty much anything. And, I gotta say, this is my opinion and my opinion alone. Don't take it as gospel. And, yeah, we'll see you in the next one. I hope you guys have a really great day. Bye.